The inside story on the issues that affect you and your community. This is Local 12 Newsmakers.
We're a grassroots effort, and it's, enough for multiple people to have full-time jobs. And, it's completely different people than I would have anticipated. People from all neighborhoods around Cincinnati, lots of different backgrounds, and really have different reasons for supporting it. But yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised at the number of people who are engaged in this.
Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. I'm Dan Hurley. Last week, I was joined by Colin Groth, the new president of Cincinnati's oldest local political organization, the Charter Committee. This morning, I'm joined by the spokesperson for the grassroots effort to keep the streetcar construction moving in the face of newly elected mayor determined to kill it. The focus this morning is not so much on the streetcar itself, but what happens next. Thousands of people came together in a remarkably short period of time and found a way not only to save the first phase of the streetcar, but to rally the community to support a vision of the future. Ryan Messer is a resident of Over the Rhine and a senior district manager at Johnson & Johnson. An interesting note to me is that before November, John Schneider, the longtime guru of rail transit in Cincinnati and a frequent guest on this show, did not even know Mr. Messer. Contained in that story, along with the election of Colin Groth, is a message about the transfer of responsibility for the future of this region to a new generation. Ryan, welcome back to Newsmakers.
Thanks, Dan.
Since I talked to you the last time, incredible amount has happened, and despite incredibly long odds, and I thought there wasn't a whole lot of chance, you pulled this off. What would you say was the role of the quote-unquote organization? You didn't even really have time to really put together a organization, but the movement that rallied. What would you say the role was in affecting these various council people who changed their minds?
I think our primary role was to dig in ourselves to get some of the information that would lead us to the right decision, whatever that might be. And, I saw this group that was quite diverse from, like, all neighborhoods, backgrounds, that type of thing, many of which I had never met before. But we kind of started to meet to dig into information and learn things that, frankly, hadn't been shared with the community. So part of our job was to find out that information and then get it into the hands not just of the council members, but also those people that were their constituents, to make sure that as decisions were being made by the council members, the people around them, the people that put them in office, also had an understanding of that information. We found that there was quite a bit of that.
Was there did you begin with the point that, wow, this is pretty bleak? And was there at some point you said, we've got a chance at this? We got a chance to actually get those 6 votes?
Yeah, I think at the beginning, there were a lot of question marks.
To put it mildly.
Yeah, and you start with a swearing in, and then all of a sudden the next day we were in the throes of debate. And frankly, from the mayor's position being so strong, that put us kind of on the defensive, that we felt that to overcome this, it was going to take a lot of work. But I think we also believed that there was an opportunity here to clarify what was political rhetoric, go back to the facts that frankly maybe hadn't been shared as well as they should have been or could have been, and then get a responsible conversation that not only looked at the value of the streetcar and long-term rail transit for the region, but also on the fiscal responsibility side of, we've spent X amount of dollars. Let's figure out what that is before we start saying we're going to stop or kill something. I
have to tell you that when I had the mayor on here, I guess 3 weeks ago, and I'm not sure if it was on air just as it was over, Mayor Cranley said to me, because I said I wanted to have you on, he said, be sure to ask when they're going to start taxing themselves, because they told us they would be willing to raise the money to help on the operations side with a special district or whatever. So is that something you're going to move forward on? What's going to be the relationship? How are you going to take whatever it is, organization or however we term this, how do you use all those people, and how do you move forward from here?
Yeah, and from my perspective, the political side of this is over. And so I'd rather the mayor have asked me some of those questions directly than asking the anchor to ask me a question and a show following, because you know, I look at this as our city is a business, and sometimes business leaders may not agree with the direction that the board has gone, but they have to align. They are ultimately the CEO that has to ensure the long-term success. So what I hope is that we're going to get everybody back in the spirit of communication, and I have had conversations with not only those council members who have supported the streetcar over the long term, but some of those that aligned later in the process to figure out what's our go-forward plan. And so we want to do that not just with them, but with the mayor. And our first priority...
Have you had conversations with the mayor?
I have not.
Okay.
You know, we did trade some communication over the holidays with his chief of staff, so I'm definitely interested in that, and will own making sure that I do my part to make that happen. But, you know, this Believe in Cincinnati group has come together, and I think the most important role that we have is to ensure success of part one.
Okay. And
aligning the entire city around the information that will make that a successful economic driver for the city.
Okay. And have you had a chance as a organization for the leadership, and who is the leadership besides you, to get together and really talk about, oh gee, what do we do with all of this?
Sure. Yeah. You know, things happen, and you know, kind of pushed it over the finish line, and then lots of people took off for the holidays and that type of thing. So, you know, then we stood around and said, wow, I mean, to have 13,000 plus signatures that people signed, you know, some weren't valid, but we had over 11,000 valid signatures in what many call the fastest, most efficient signature drive in the history of Cincinnati. Over 1,000 people actually went out into the streets to collect signatures. And what I will say is, this wasn't a group of yuppies. I mean, we had my favorite day in our campaign office. I was in a photograph, and the only one under the age of 75. Lifelong Cincinnatians that believe in what this city can grow up to be. So it was about the streetcar, but it was about the streetcar because of the economic development and growth that it provides, but also for the long-term vision of the city. And you look at disparity in education among various groups within our community. You look at workers' rights and those types of issues that help make us a stronger, more viable city. All those things, you know, have been kind of tossed our way to say, how can we leverage this group of progressives that aren't necessarily Democratic or not necessarily Republican? These are people that really care about the future of Cincinnati and see a brighter future than the city, than where we are today.
You know, in terms of the way this took place, I mean, just sort of getting kick-started so quickly, in terms of the way you just put it, not Democrats, not Republicans, but you use the term progressive, in many ways that, and focus locally, that sounds so much to me as a historian like the way the charter started. Mm-hmm. You know, you've always had people who were on a state and national level who were both Democrats and Republicans, but, you know, using their phrase, there was no Democratic or Republican way to fix a pothole, mm-hmm. just an efficient and an effective way to do it. And, you know, that you don't have to get into these ideological debates. So it seems like, you know, you said Democrats and Republicans, you seem like there is this other element already out there, the charter committee. Does that make sense?
Yeah, my understanding, and frankly, I haven't had lots of involvement in the political scene in Cincinnati, specifically with parties, the charter Democrat or Republican parties, but I still see those three as very political in nature.
Okay.
I see ours as more issues-based, and not just about you know, the issues, but ensuring that people have a fair, balanced knowledge of these issues. How do we bring people from all different backgrounds together to really figure out what is the story, take away the political rhetoric, take away elections and those types of things, but figure out what are those issues that a lot of people care about in Cincinnati, and then more importantly, how do we engage people in those issues? How do we engage them to ensure that these issues that political parties talk about can become reality or become successful? And so that's how we're organizing. And just last week, we held our first retreat with the leadership of Believe in Cincinnati. We've got thousands of members out there that are asking us what's next. So we've really started that strategic framework of what we could be in the long term.
Do you have a way of communicating with people?
Yeah.
Is keeping them in touch? How do you do that for people who want to stay in touch or get in touch?
Yeah. Well, we do have a website, believeInCincy.com, and I think that's a great place for people to go to sign up. And then we have right now, it's about a monthly newsletter, sometimes a little more frequent. But just, for example, our first priority has to be ensuring success of phase 1 of the streetcar. And there is a lot of work that needs to be done, and I think we've got a lot of talented people who can help make that a success. Everything from ensuring that there is a diverse workforce building the streetcar, to ensuring that businesses that are on or around the streetcar route aren't negatively impacted. So in our newsletter that just went out on Friday of this week, it clearly stated that here's a business that's got a lot of construction out front, Alabama Fish Market, right downtown. So we're going to send our supporters there to help them.
Liberty and Vine.
That's right there at Liberty and Vine, and send our supporters to go help, make up some of that business that they may be missing because people like to drive by and pull over right where that construction is taking place. So. Phase 1 obviously is our priority, and then ensuring that we're looking at federal and state funds and really looking at a longer term plan for phase 2.
Well, one of the things that was interesting about the way this unfolded too was how pretty deep into the process, but all of a sudden there were lines of communication with the business leaders.
That's right.
And that seems really interesting to me too, that all of a sudden you were talking to Tom Williams, you were talking to the Hale Foundation, there was communication at that level. We got less than a minute. How important is that?
It's extremely important, and not only did we see those lines of communication open up, but they signed on to support our efforts. And so I think if I were a business leader in many of their positions, I would welcome this growing group of motivated Cincinnatians with one focus, and that's to make Cincinnati a better place.
Well, thank you for what you've already done. Really looking forward to seeing what you do in the future.
Thank you.
And you'll be back.
Thanks.
Okay. Stay tuned. As part of its 20th anniversary, the Cincinnati Shakespeare Company is about to accomplish a very rare feat. Welcome back. Regular viewers of Newsmakers know that I love theater. For years, my wife and I have held season tickets at the Playhouse in the Park, the Ensemble Theater, and the Cincinnati Shakespeare Company. This year marks the 450th anniversary of the birth of William Shakespeare and the 20th anniversary of the Cincinnati Shakespeare Company. Right now, the company is in the midst of its production of one of Shakespeare's most provocative plays, Hamlet. The company will immediately follow with Tom Stoppard's wonderful Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, which will surely have Shakespeare rolling in the aisles and a bit bewildered by the modern mind. I am joined this morning by Brian Isaacs Phillips, the producing artistic director who started as an actor in the ensemble 15 years ago. He doesn't like to be reminded of that. Over his career, Mr. Phillips has worked on every professional stage in Cincinnati with regional theaters all over the Midwest and the East. Brian, welcome to Newsmakers.
Hi, thanks for having me.
20 years.
Yep.
And you didn't hear this, but the way I sort of tease this segment going in, you're going to reach a milestone this year in terms of the Shakespeare plays that you've produced that very few other Shakespeare theaters have reached.
Yeah, that's correct. We'll be one of only 5 theaters in the United States to complete the 38-play Shakespeare canon. So we're pretty excited about that.
I got to be careful about how I ask this question, but why is it taking you Why is it taking you 20 years to get all 38 on stage?
Some of them are more challenging to produce than others, so you want to make sure that in a season you have a balance. So you've got your Midsummer, you've got your Romeo and Juliet, and you balance that with a Cymbeline or a Titus Andronicus every now and then. And actually, it's fascinating. We have produced most of the canon in just the last 11 seasons. I think that Coriolanus is one of the only ones that sort of predates 2004.
Well, and the interesting thing is, as great as Shakespeare was, some are better than others. 2 seasons ago, you had Henry VIII, which I have to tell you, I was struggling during that one. It was like, this is Shakespeare?
Yeah, there are some that are more challenging than others. There's some that are more entertaining than others. Henry VIII's a really great example of a difficult one because there's sort of 3 different plots. But we also do more than just Shakespeare. You know, we do contemporary classics, and what we did with Henry VIII was we made sure that we paired it with A Man for All Seasons to sort of give our audience.
It's wonderful. I hadn't seen that produced for a long time, many years, but when you put it on, and I thought that was really good.
Oh, thank you.
One of the interesting things about your company is that it's an ensemble company. What does that mean?
We hire a company of actors to join us for the entire season. So, and then a lot of those actors stay on year after year, and that means you get to see them in a variety of roles in one season and hopefully over a longer span of time. So you can see actors like Jeremy Dubin or Jim Hopkins.
In fact, we have Jeremy Dubin, a little bit of a clip here of Mice and Men earlier this season. So why don't we can roll that while you're talking?
Oh,
yeah.
great.
So what's that for you or for an actor? What's that mean to get to be playing all these different roles in front of very similar audiences? You know there's people out there who have seen you play all kinds of other things.
Sure. I mean, it gets to stretch you because you're being challenged on every single production to be different, to keep it fresh. But the really exciting thing about working with an ensemble is that you get to create a shorthand together in the rehearsal process. So you get to know each other, and you get to dive right into the meat of the work very quickly and skip over some of the introductions that can take a bit of time.
And in fact, I'd like to just move on here. We've got a still of Jeremy Dubin coming up in Twelfth Night, I think, where he's going to look very different. Just the costume, there he is on the right. The costuming tells you he's not playing Steinbeck's 20th century of Mice and Men. As artistic director, what is it that really challenges you? What is it that you really like about this role that you play at this point?
I like getting to be the person that chooses the stories that we're going to tell, to be able to look through Shakespeare's canon, the classical canon, literary adaptations, and figure out what's going to be the most exciting for our audience and the most challenging for our actors, and year after year, month after month, keep trying to tell those stories and keep them fresh and show how the classics are so important in our contemporary lives.
Yeah, I think that in the way that you juxtapose oftentimes a Shakespeare or another classic play with a modern play often brings that connection home if people really go to see the entire season, or if they see the ones that are paired, and it just, or the way that you stage a Shakespeare play.
Yeah, yeah, and within the Shakespeare that we do, they're not all Elizabethan, they're not all contemporary. There is a variety with the approach that we're going to take to each one. So in a season, you'll get your more Shakespeare, and then sometimes you'll get something very cutting edge.
You and I were talking about this on the phone when I called you up. I go back far enough with the Shakespeare company and theater. I remember when you used to have seats right on the stage, on both sides of the stage, and you weren't able to find a photo of that. And I can remember, I don't know what the play was, it was a Shakespeare play, that someone came out and passed out towels ahead of the production because people in the front row were going to get wet, and you had to have a towel to wipe off. And I always recommend it when I talk to high school students. I did this several times when I was speaking to a high school group that was interested in theater, said that was for Shakespeare's company is the right place to go to get started. But sitting on that stage, and because it was just, you went up and you just sat there. You didn't sell those seats specifically. They were totally uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely uncomfortable, but you were part of the action and you had to duck if there was a sword fight. So.
That's right. That's right. That's right. So, somebody like Jeremy Dubin, who's been there for a long time, Giles Davis, I mean, these are people who, in the creative process, I mean, they've been there, each been connected for almost 14 years, I think, only slightly less than you. They must have a lot of input. It must not just be, oh, they're the actor on the stage, we're telling them what
No,
to do.
absolutely. It's another nice thing about the ensemble is not just the ability to work together on the play, but to have a conversation about the organization and about what we're going to do. And it's the culture of Cincinnati Shakespeare Company is very collaborative, so it allows people to feel like they have skin in the game and they're very invested in the success of the company. It's just not just one show. It's trying to create an institution.
It's also interesting, and this is something that Lynn Myers at the ensemble, who's also connected with your ensemble theater, but also connected with your ensemble, you have her on the webpage, talks about all the time, the importance of making it possible for professional theater people, actors, actresses, stage people, lighter, all the people, to actually live in Cincinnati and have a career, which allows us to have the sort of local theater that we have. And that's one of the things that keeping your people together so long, that really makes it possible because they pop up on other stages.
Yeah, it's very important to us to relocate artists to Cincinnati, to show them how exciting Cincinnati can be, how you can make a living in the arts, in theater here, and keep them around so that Ensemble can use them, so that No can use them, Playhouse can use them. And I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Lynn. I actually started off at Ensemble Theater thanks to her. So, and sold me on Cincinnati, and I've been here ever since.
Well, you know, it's really, you know, I want to go back to, I realize we've got one more still that I haven't made reference to, and that's with the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, which is coming up. There, you had a still of, is it Brian Chase? Or no,
Billy Chase.
Billy Chase.
Yes.
Billy Chase. If we could bring that up, because this is the sort of thing that if you go to your theater frequently enough, and he's on the left for the viewer, if you can see his face, the facial expression, you just know that is, there's certain roles that I would think it's not the words, it's not his ability to do other things, it's just the face is perfect for certain roles.
Yes.
And I'm really looking forward to him in that one.
Yeah, Billy and Justin are going to be fantastic, and Jeremy Dubin's actually directing that production.
Oh,
so
yes,
he gets to put on his director's hat for the next one.
So, how are you doing, how does a theater 20 years in, coming off a very difficult economic time, how are you doing financially?
We've had, the past 3 seasons have been the most successful in the history of the organization. Subscriptions are up, ticket sales are up, we have packed houses every night, our education numbers are up. So there's something about the staying power of the classics. There's been some very smart decisions at the board level to keep us safe through the recession. And now we're at a moment where we can start to talk about investing in the future. We have a wonderful executive director, Jay Woffington, who's joined us a couple years ago, and he's really been very inspiring to the administrative side of the organization, and it's helped us succeed on a business level so that we can focus as much as possible on the art, to continue doing the best art possible, which then ultimately just feeds back into the business being successful.
Yeah, and I mean, that really, people maybe from the outside, even those of us who love theater, don't always recognize there has to be that business side to allow the creative people to do what they do really well. So you're in the midst of Hamlet. I want to make sure, and you've got Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, and how many more plays coming up after Hamlet?
After that, we've got 3, technically 4. We are following Rosencrantz and Guildenstern with Henry IV, Part 1 and 2, which will continue our history cycle. We're going to be one of the only theaters in America to do a chronological history cycle, and that's going to be fantastic. That's going to be followed by The Two Noble Kinsmen, which completes the canon for us, and then Lynn's going to join us to direct Noel Coward's Private Lives to button the season.
And if people people want to find out more about the theater and to buy tickets, you can go, first off, the theater's at 719 Ray Street, so easy to find downtown. You can go to Cincy Shakes, C-I-N-C-Y Shakes.com, or call 381-2273. And Hamlet runs through February the 8th. Are there still tickets left?
There are a few.
There are a few, so call today. And Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead starts on February the 18th. Thank you, congratulations, and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Stay tuned. After our thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Join me again next week to meet the men and the women working to shape our community for the future. Have a good week.